experts warn of widespread surge after holiday gatherings and travel. Hoboken's Mayor Ravi Bhalla urging all residents who gathered for Thanksgiving to get tested.
Yeah, starting tomorrow, he is making testing widely available in Hoboken. Mayor Bhalla joins us live. Mayor, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Mayor, as we look at the demographics of Hoboken, there are roughly 50,000 residents. I'm curious, what is your plan for getting all of these residents tested, and are there actually enough tests actually available?
Well, that we've had the fortune of numbering with many private entities through public-private partnerships to make sure that every day of the week, if you want a test, you can get a test. Even if you're uninsured, the city will pay for your test, and that test is reimbursed by the CARES Act. So our advice is if you've been at a family gathering or at a gathering with multiple households during Thanksgiving, please do get a test and avail yourself of that, because that really is the best means for us as a government to keep our residents safe.
So let me ask you this then, because I'm sure a lot of people want a test. I wanted a test. I don't live in Hoboken. I live in New York City. I've wanted one for days, and the lines are just incredibly long. One of our producers lives in Hoboken. She said at some of these private urgent cares, the lines are very long. How long do you anticipate people waiting, and what's your advice to them if they say, I don't have the time to wait?
Absolutely. We've also experienced long lines at some of our private facilities, as well as the ones that we make publicly available. And that's exactly the reason why in the last several weeks, we've partnered with about five or six different private entities to really ramp up our infrastructure for testing, because the demand is through the roof. So because of that, we're making sure that we do our very best to make it possible for people, if they want to get a test, they can get a test.
Yeah.
And if you do have that possibility of an exposure, we strongly urge you to do so.
So let me get pushed a little bit on this and be very clear. Will there be additional places to get testing to reduce the lines because of the demand, especially because you knew the holidays were coming?
Absolutely, 100%. We've partnered with multiple private groups, Ivy, Medicine Man, Prompt MD, Riverside, to have use our public facilities. The multi-service center, various different locations, even private developers have lended space where we can have indoor testing because of the cold weather. So we've worked very hard as a government to make sure that as we see a surge, not just of the pandemic, but in the demand for testing, that we have the infrastructure necessary to avoid those long lines, avoid what we saw before Thanksgiving.
And Mayor, staying on the topic of testing here, obviously a lot of people being encouraged to get tested if they did spend the Thanksgiving away around a lot of folks. Based on that positivity rate, are there any plans for a possible citywide shutdown?
We don't have any plans for a citywide shutdown. That authority rests with Trenton, with the state of New Jersey. Governor Murphy has indicated that nothing is off the table, but what we're trying to do right now is to send a message to people to try to avoid that outcome. And it's all within our hands. It's all on us to try to avoid the outcome. We can do it if we're responsible, if we do the basic things like wearing a face mask when you're outdoors, when you're indoors, washing your hands, social distancing. And even if you're asymptomatic, but you've been at a family gathering during Thanksgiving with multiple people outside of your immediate family, then really get a test. It's really the responsible thing to do at this point.
Okay, but when you look at a city like Newark, they didn't rely on Trenton. They actually closed down some streets, took some actions on their own. What do you have the power to then shut down? Because just recently video footage surfaced of packed bars in Hoboken. So are there any plans to close bars and restaurants for indoor dining who are not adhering to the guidelines, especially because Hoboken is so tightly packed?
Absolutely. Any bars or restaurants that do not adhere to the guidelines, as our police chief has indicated, will be sanctioned, subject to closure if there are egregious violations. But again, we are abiding by the state guidelines. They do allow a limitation of time, so we have reduced the time for bars to be open to be 10 p.m. As per state guidelines. We don't have the same situation as Newark. Their numbers are substantially higher than Hoboken's, but we do still have the same trends you're seeing in New York with spikes in cases, and we really want to take any measures that we can to mitigate that.
Mayor Bhalla, before we let you go quickly, what are your plans for enforcement of this cancellation of SantaCon? Obviously, folks are still allowed to dress up as Santa. Bars close at 10, but how can you actually enforce it if folks do want to somehow organize a early bar crawl?
You know, it's really a partnership with the bars, making sure that we have the relationships with those establishments to make it clear that even signing up to participate in a bar crawl in this environment is extraordinarily not only irresponsible, but if there are violations of COVID regulations, you will be sanctioned. There's a good chance you will be shut down. So the police department is not afraid to enforce the law, and it has sent a clear indication that on SantaCon it will do so if necessary.
So it's more so, not so much if somebody just decides to dress up as Santa, but more so that the bars should really be adhering to the rules and regulations. Mayor Bhalla, appreciate your time and your voice this morning.
Thank you. Have a nice day.